Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us for AGA's annual State of the Industry. Anyone who has been watching knows that the state of our industry is strong. Customers continue to demand our product. Operators and manufacturers continue to create innovative, fun, and thrilling experiences. This has driven record performance. Before we get into the details of 2023, I do want to take a minute to acknowledge a historic moment for our industry. Just last week, Las Vegas hosted the Super Bowl. And had you asked me 10 years ago or even 5 years ago, it would be hard to imagine one of the world's premier sporting events in Las Vegas, Nevada. It was really a full circle moment for the city, and yet another example of how much we've transformed as an industry. It shows that today we are broadly embraced by the public and key stakeholders, including professional sports leagues, and the teams. And it all happened in just 5 short years since the fall of PASPA. It is truly remarkable. Look, we have a great program today. I'll talk about our industry's record performance in 2023 and share a path ahead for 2024 with the help from some members of the AGA team. At last year's State of the Industry, we talked about headwinds that were facing our industry. Namely, there was some concern about the economy, and rightfully so. Inflation was high, the cost of capital was rising, uncertainty was in the air. Forecasters couldn't agree what these conditions might do to discretionary spending. Some of our industry CEOs were cautious, if not outright pessimistic about the outlook. But in the end, 2023 defied those expectations. Inflation began to cool, consumers kept spending, and the Fed held rates steady. At the same time, our industry kept growing and innovating. Today, casino gaming is available to more customers than ever before. There are more than 1,000 casinos in the U.S. iGaming is live in 7 states, and sports betting is now available in 38 states and the District of Columbia. And there's record demand for the experiences we offer. Last year, nearly half of all American adults participated in some form of gambling. Altogether, this resulted in a record breaker of a year for gaming. Our industry posted incredible performance, setting a new high water mark. Commercial gaming revenue increased 10% just in 2023. Not surprisingly, part of this incredible growth is due to the outsized performance in iGaming and sports betting. Sports betting posted a remarkable 45% growth over the previous year, driven by the launch of 5 new markets. And iGaming grew 23% over the same period. Traditional gaming, the backbone of our industry, produced normalized growth during the year. Slots increased 3.8%, while table games grew by 3.5%. We anticipate similar strength in tribal gaming when the data is reported later this year, resulting in our second consecutive $100 billion year. This growth translated into robust economic and community impact. Last year, our industry contributed $14.4 billion in taxes to state and local governments, the most ever. Now I'd like to ask Dave Foreman, our Vice President of Research, to tell you more about the details that fueled our industry's strong performance in 2023. Dave?
Thanks, Bill. And as you mentioned, last year was the highest revenue year ever for the U.S. commercial gaming sector. Together, the traditional brick and mortar, sports betting, and iGaming verticals generated $66.5 billion in commercial gaming revenue, 10% higher than 2022. To put that in perspective, last year's commercial gaming revenue growth was the equivalent of adding more than another New Jersey or Pennsylvania to the national market. And as Bill alluded to, when tribal gaming revenue is reported later this year, the entire U.S. gaming industry likely generated about $110 billion in gaming revenue last year, putting gaming about in line with beer when it comes to overall consumer spending. Looking across commercial verticals, brick and mortar casinos generated $49.4 billion in gaming revenue, with sports betting bringing in $10.9 billion and iGaming nearly $6.2 billion. Taking a closer look at each vertical, beginning with the largest, traditional brick and mortar. Slot and table revenue reached $49.4 billion last year, up 3.3% from 2022. Slot revenue alone grew by 3.8% to $35.5 billion, while table revenue reached $10.3 billion, a 3.5% increase. Both are new annual records. At the state level, traditional gaming revenue, meaning slots and tables, increased over 2022 in 19 of the 27 states that offered it. And among those 19, 15 states set new annual brick and mortar gaming revenue records for themselves. Among those states that experienced a drop in traditional gaming revenue, Indiana and Maryland had the steepest declines, falling just under 3.5% each, while Mississippi fell 3% and Iowa had a 1.2% decline, all of which were impacted by increased regional cross-border competition for players with the opening of new casinos in their regions. Michigan brick and mortar revenue also fell by just under 3% last year, driven in large part by a labor dispute at the Detroit casinos. Market-wise, the Las Vegas Strip remains far and away the largest commercial gaming market in the country, helped by its very healthy 7.5% growth last year. Beyond Nevada, Atlantic City comfortably retained its spot at number 2, and behind that, the Washington, D.C. and Chicago areas continued their multi-year back and forth for the third largest market, with Chicago taking back that position last year. At the property level, Resorts World New York reclaimed its position as the highest grossing casino outside of Nevada and Mississippi, neither of which report property level revenue details, with MGM National Harbor being the second highest grossing property outside of those two states. Notably, in just its 4th full year of operations, Southland Casino in Arkansas broke into the top 20 and is now the 20th highest grossing property outside of Nevada and Mississippi. Turning to sports betting, we're still waiting for Arizona's December numbers as well as Kentucky's November and December numbers. But excluding those, Americans collectively bet nearly $120 billion on sports through legal commercial sports books in 2023, driving sports betting revenue of $10.9 billion. Nationwide sports betting handle increased nearly 28%, while revenue grew by 45% compared to 2022. Sports betting revenue was helped by the launch of legal sports betting in 5 new markets last year: Massachusetts, Ohio, Kentucky, Maine, and Nebraska, and by a 9.1% national hold last year, up from 8.1% in 2022. At the state level for sports betting, New York solidified its position as the largest sports betting market in the country, generating $1.7 billion in sports betting revenue, followed by New Jersey and then Illinois, both at just over $1 billion in sports betting revenue. Ohio, in its first year with legal sports betting, quickly became the 4th largest market in the country, generating $935 million in sports betting revenue. And finally, iGaming was fully available in 6 states, not counting Nevada, which only offers online poker and doesn't break that revenue out. 2023 iGaming revenue totaled just over $6.2 billion, up 23% from 2022, even with no new states coming online last year. Each of the 6 iGaming markets set new revenue records last year, but the vast majority of revenue there came from just 3 states, New Jersey, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, combined to account for $5.6 billion in iGaming revenue. It's more than 90% of the total national market. Notably, Michigan became the largest iGaming market in the country for the first time last year, just barely beating New Jersey, each with $1.9 billion in iGaming revenue, and Pennsylvania reached $1.7 billion in iGaming revenue last year as the 3rd largest iGaming market. We've had incredible growth over the past 3 years, and as newer markets begin to mature and the comps to previous record years become harder to match, these records won't be monthly occurrences forever. But gaming has changed dramatically over the past few years in ways that point to a sustainable new business model for the longer term. Nationwide, commercial gaming revenue is nearly 50% higher than it was in 2019. That's driven by physical expansion, but also by new online gaming options available to more people than ever before. Last year, nearly 25% of all commercial gaming revenue came from digital sources, whether sports betting or iGaming, up from 13% just 2 years ago in 2021. At the same time that online gaming has expanded, the average age of a casino visitor fell for the 4th year in a row. Last year, the average age of a person on a physical casino floor was 42, nearly 8 years younger than it was in 2019. Next month, Rhode Island will become the 7th state with live iGaming, the first new market since Connecticut launched in October 2021. and North Carolina will become the 30th state to offer mobile sports betting. It's been a record-setting few years, and the future continues to look bright. And with that, I'll turn it back to Bill and others to talk about the AGA's priorities for 2024.
Thanks, Dave. In 2024, we will build on this momentum. Our reputation and popularity continue to accelerate growth and performance. 9 in 10 Americans believe that casino gaming is acceptable for themselves or for others. This level of support has been consistent for the past decade. We must remain vigilant to protect our hard-earned reputation, which is one of the reasons we consistently track public opinion and consumer behavior. The protections of the legal market continue to attract bettors. For this year's Super Bowl, 28.7 million American adults plan to bet on the game legally. And we are seen as responsible leaders who make an impact in the communities in which we work. Nearly 3/4 of Americans believe that our industry has a positive impact on the U.S. economy. And the numbers bear that out. AGA research shows gaming generates nearly $330 billion in annual economic impact and supports 1.8 million jobs. While it may be a challenge to continue our recent record rates, our industry's future is brighter than ever because of the solid foundation we've built. And priorities for 2024, they stay focused on what matters. To capitalize on the opportunities ahead of us, we must stay resolutely focused on our industry's priorities. And they are clear: lead responsibly and fight illegal gambling. Let's talk first about our commitment to responsible leadership. As you all know, we face a persistent counter-narrative. As we prepared for the Super Bowl, leading national media outlets ran segments on the growth and the impact of legal sports betting. Primarily, these stories have elevated the same misperceptions about our industry that, quite frankly, we've heard for years. And as we grow and we enter new markets and introduce new products, we'll continue to face this narrative. Our industry's commitment to RG is real, and it's deep. And we believe that people struggling with gambling addiction should be able to get the help they need. We have a lot more to do to help stakeholders understand our commitment to helping people play responsibly. I remind the media every chance I get that more attention, more resources, and more programs are being dedicated to problem gambling than has ever been done before. And nearly every dollar that states earmarked for responsible and problem gambling programs, about $100 million last year, come from casino gaming taxes, including growing sports betting and iGaming taxes. We also must continue to elevate our RG commitments. Kate DeBon, the AGA's Vice President of Strategic Communications and Responsibility, is spearheading this work. Let me turn it to Kate to share more about what's planned for the year ahead.
Thanks, Bill. It's great to be here with you today. We're 5 years into the greatest period of legal expansion in our industry's history, and our ability to strengthen responsible gambling in 2024 will prove critical for the industry's long-term sustainability. It's an opportunity that raises big questions. Among them, how do we ensure a player-centric approach to RG? How do we build on individual approaches while unifying around common efforts? Can we move beyond the status quo to drive meaningful changes? Where can we allocate our collective resources to make the greatest impact? This year, the AGA will bring together our members, academics, advocates, regulators, and other key stakeholders to explore these questions. We'll look to improve how we communicate RG to players and our efforts to key stakeholders, to strengthen standards and industry-wide commitments, to engage executives to help shape our efforts. It certainly won't be easy, but our potential success will be transformative for years and decades to come.
There's an incredible amount of activity and investment in this space. What trends would you like to highlight in responsible gambling?
It's really a remarkable time to be in the responsible gambling space. You said it earlier, and it certainly bears repeating, because I don't actually think it's fully appreciated. There's never been more resources, more interest, or more investment in responsible and problem gambling than there is today. And of course, there's always more to be done. Looking ahead, I'm really excited about the opportunities for RG around data and machine learning. There's significant work underway in this space, exploring how to marry research and problem gambling with data from customer play, machine learning, and customer service to encourage positive play and identify potentially risky play. We're taking our time here because it's so essential we get this right. We also need to make sure our approach is balanced with customer choice and privacy and our ability to offer an appealing product and drive out the illegal market. I expect we'll see ongoing learning and deeper investment in this space in 2023 and for years to come. Next, I'd point to increased collaboration. We all know this is a highly competitive industry, but by and large, that's not the case when it comes to RG. Industry and advocates, academics and regulators, leagues and media, we all have a vested interest in RG and increasingly understand that we can be more effective when we unify resources and align toward common goals. We've seen that in investments in research through ICRG, the work we're all doing to help harmonize helplines across states, or consumer awareness campaigns like Have a Game Plan. I expect further streamlining in the year ahead as we collectively work to elevate responsible gambling across our industry. With that, I'll turn it back to you, Bill, to continue our priorities discussion.
This work is essential because our business relies on empowered consumers who play responsibly and stakeholders who trust the safeguards that are put in place so they can do so. Thank you, Kate, for sharing this and for your leadership on RG. As I mentioned earlier, we are also remain focused on the illegal market. We have a defined, clear goal: shut down the illegal market. Our fight is focused on both skill machines and offshore online websites. We're fighting against skill machines in places like Pennsylvania, Virginia, and Missouri. These manufacturers are spending ungodly sums of money to change the minds of legislators who were once supportive of the legal regulated marketplace. And we're in lockstep with our industry partners to ensure in each of these states that these skill game manufacturers, they either play by the same rules we do or they get shut down. And on offshore and faux fantasy websites, we continue to work with the Department of Justice and state regulators on enforcement and technology platforms that host and offer these illegal websites and the media that often unwittingly feature them, just to name a few of the lanes we're pursuing. Chris Silke, the AGA's Senior Vice President of Government Relations, is on the front lines of this effort. And I'd like to invite him to share more about the state of play of the illegal market, starting with skill games.
Thanks, Bill. 2024 is poised to be a very consequential year in the fight against skill games. Over the past 5 years, we've all witnessed distributors of these devices pursue the same playbook across multiple states. They flooded the markets using dubious legal arguments to claim they're skill-based, not gambling, and therefore not subject to the same regulations as slot machines. They've used litigation to frustrate action by gaming regulators and law enforcement, and continue to spend heavily on political contributions to prevent state legislatures from enacting laws to clarify what we all know, that these are in fact gambling devices. In 2023, it was encouraging to see positive momentum to address this problem across several states. Kentucky enacted a skill game ban, the Virginia Supreme Court upheld their own ban, and gaming regulators in Florida and Michigan pursued aggressive action to shut down and even publicly destroy these machines. But the start of 2024 has proven the axiom that no victory is ever permanent. The industry currently faces uphill battles in both Virginia and Pennsylvania to prevent legislatures from legitimizing and rewarding these bad actors with light regulation and a low tax rate. The AGA is leading the fight alongside operators in both of these states, investing financial resources and working together on media and advocacy strategies to ensure that these efforts do not succeed. We know that the stakes for the industry are incredibly high, not only for operators in Virginia and Pennsylvania, but because the outcomes in these states will likely impact how other jurisdictions grappling with this problem choose to address it. It's also worth highlighting several bright spots to start this year. Recently in Missouri, another state that has been deluged by skill games, the Springfield City Council unanimously enacted a local ordinance to ban unregulated machines. The state legislature there had failed to act on this issue, and the council was simply fed up with how the proliferation of these machines has impacted the community. So this is a promising development that could serve as a model for other jurisdictions who want to protect their citizens from this scourge. And in Florida, the legislature there is in the process of moving legislation that would increase fines and criminal penalties for those who offer illegal gambling devices, which should turbocharge the impact of the good enforcement efforts already being undertaken by their Gaming Control Board.
We're not going to stop. We are not going to stop until these machines are either regulated just the same as our industry, or quite frankly, they're put out of business. Chris, the team is looking closely at faux fantasy operators as well as offshore websites. What's the latest on there?
AGA's position on faux fantasy has been clear. DFS and sports betting are different products. In most states, they're regulated differently, taxed differently, and have different minimum age requirements. With the regulatory and licensing requirements for sports betting operators generally significantly higher, it's problematic if companies are intentionally blurring the lines between the two categories. It's not our role to make those determinations, but we continue to encourage regulators to be vigilant to ensure DFS products don't cross the line into sports betting. It's been encouraging to see regulators in almost a dozen states look at this issue and determine that actions are warranted to protect the integrity of their marketplaces. We're also making meaningful strides when it comes to addressing offshore casinos and sports books that target the U.S. market. In 2023, gaming regulators from 9 states coalesced to urge the Department of Justice to prioritize enforcement action against the illegal offshore market. They recognize that the accessibility of these platforms undermines the good work they do to regulate and protect consumers within their respective jurisdictions. The federal government's resources and reach put it in the best position to address this complex problem, but we've also urged regulators to use their positions to make it clear to these platforms that they are operating illegally. Last summer, the AGA distributed an enforcement playbook to all gaming regulators, which highlighted some of the most prominent offshore platforms and encouraged regulators to issue cease and desist letters to those targeting citizens of their states. Cease and desist letters are certainly not a silver bullet and can be ignored, but they do represent an important official governmental determination of the illegality of these sites, which we can leverage with federal law enforcement as well as tech platforms to get them to take action. In some cases, these letters have proven effective on their own, which we recently witnessed when several online operators pulled out of Michigan in response to cease and desist letters they received. On the Hill, we're continuing to educate members of Congress about the dangers posed by the rampant offshore market. And they've responded by including language in their appropriations bills directing the Justice Department to prioritize enforcement against illegal gambling. We've always recognized that tackling the offshore market would be a tall task, but I'm confident that our efforts over the past several years have primed the pump for positive outcomes in the future. We'll continue to attack this problem from all angles in 2024 and ensure that all stakeholders are doing their part to eradicate illegal gambling online.
Thank you. Thank you, Chris, for this update and for everything you're doing to fight the illegal market. These are just a few of the priorities we've been tackling this year. I encourage you to visit AmericanGaming.org to learn more about our work in 2024. The AGA is proud to be your advocate. And while it may be hard to top our performance from an industry perspective in 2023, if any industry can do it, it's this one. We are looking forward to another great year and fighting for our great industry. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. We're excited to be here today, and we have a few more minutes left for some questions. So to get started, Bill, we've talked a lot about the success of 2023. What does 2024 look like? How are you feeling about the environment in the year ahead?
Well, thank you, Kate. I think that, one thing we talked about, and I spoke about it earlier, there was a great deal of concern in the lead up to 2023 around all of the economic uncertainty. And clearly the industry has overperformed, if you will, at least in terms of what people thought about at the beginning of 2023. As we move into 2024, I think there is some optimism, but some realization that, we're not going to continue to have record growth every year, but we are starting to see a greater level of stabilization, at least on interest rates and inflation. And so, from a discretionary income perspective, Americans are still pretty bullish in terms of their consumer spend.
You know, we wouldn't be here in Washington and not be able to get away with an election question. Big election coming up in November. It's where all eyes are. What does that mean for our industry? Is there implications with what happens in November?
Well, I think there are always implications for elections in every industry. I think one of the things about our industry that makes it somewhat unique is we are regulated at the state level, and we have many members of Congress, both Republicans and Democrats, that come out of the state legislatures where they helped shepherd in gaming in those states. And so they have a respect for our industry. They have an understanding of what the economics that we contribute to those states. And so, you know, Republican and Democrats in Washington, it is a very dysfunctional place. We don't know who's going to be the president. We don't know what the Senate or House are going to look like. But the one thing we do know is we have built a strong and enduring foundation in both parties because of what we've done in the states all over this country.
Okay, I think we have time for one last question here. Every year, I know a hot topic in our industry is iGaming and online gaming versus kind of the traditional and how that's impacting the broader scale of the industry. Is iGaming, you know, taking away from commercial traditional gaming, or is there a benefit in both for the industry?
Well, I think that what you've seen, and obviously you've seen massive growth in sports betting post PASPA, and a much slower or measured growth in terms of iGaming. I think that we have to recognize that iGaming is a function, or mobile is a function of meeting the consumer where they are. But there's nothing that compares to, you know, brick and mortar experience of visiting a property and the amenities that are available in that experience. And so I think that what we've continued to see is growth, strong growth in the iGaming market, but also strong growth in the more mature brick and mortar market, because quite frankly, they're two very, very different experiences for the consumer.
Well, thanks, Bill. It's been a pleasure to present this year's State of the Industry. You can visit americangaming.org to review the full commercial gaming revenue tracker results. And if you're a member of the media, you're welcome to join our Zoom call immediately following this over on Zoom. Thanks all.